Welcome to Nav Chat, the show for the New Zealand orienteering and navigation sports community. Tom, welcome back for another month. How are you?
Hey, how are you?
Yeah, I'm well here in Wellington. It's been a quiet month for me. January kicked the orienteering season off pretty hard, and February hasn't lived up to the events of January. It's been very quiet. Looking forward to some events coming up over the next few months, though. Although certainly watching the COVID situation, definitely open to events either getting cancelled if the case numbers is just putting too much pressure on people, or if there's obviously some threshold for me when the case numbers are just so high that I decide that maybe it's better to stay home. I'm not quite sure where that number is, but
you say you've done hardly any orienteering. It's been cranking here in the Waikato.
Really?
Last week I orienteered 3 days in a week. It was pretty good. We've got our there's a summer sprint series, which is mean because it's not just a summer like street Rogaine. It's like basically sprint orienteering, which is real cool. The course last week, I reckon, would not have been out of place in a higher grade event. It was really good. We used like some schools with some really awesome route choice through some streets and had you kind of gassed physically when you went into the technical terrain, just like we were talking about last week. The course setter had set it really well to mix the physical with the technical challenges. We've had a summer farm event, which was really good, some rock terrain down near Wharepapa in South Waikato. And we've also had some club trainings, which have been pretty cool as well. So yeah, you may not have been orienteering, but I've probably orienteered more than I have in 6 to 12 months. It's been great.
Yeah, that sounds like a good mix. And most places in New Zealand can do sprint orienteering like that. There's always a college somewhere.
Yeah. It's pretty good. There's a lot of pretty good sprint maps around Hamilton.
Yeah. Hey,
not a bad spot.
Yeah, just another question. You've got Godzone coming up?
Yeah. Yep. Tomorrow, I'm hopping on the plane down to Queenstown and then heading to Wanaka, and we know where the start is now. Going to be kicking off from Jackson Bay down in South Westland. Should be pretty sweet. And we know it's a traverse course, they've called it, so we're expecting to go across to the East Coast. Mm-hmm. But who knows? Haven't got maps yet.
Yep.
They'll be tracking as usual. We're team, for some reason, team number 1 again. Makes it easy. We pop in at the top of the list, Ataraxia MacPath. So keep an eye out. But there's also tons of other orienteers. Greta Narston is making her expedition racing debut.
Cool.
Who else have we got in there? Obviously, all the regulars, Chris and Rachel Smith. Plenty of orienteers if you look through that entry list.
And how are you feeling personally going into this, your 5th or something, Godzone?
This is my 6th Godzone, 7th expedition race. Yeah. Good. We've got the same team as last year. Last year, the 4 of us hadn't done anything together, so we've got infinitely more experience this year. From a navigation perspective, our team, we've got 3 confident navigators. Hannah can also navigate too, so you could say at a pinch, all 4 of us could navigate. But Sean and I share the navigation, and we both have very, very different navigation styles, which we have kind of incorporated into how we race. It's quite good. You kind of have 2 people who navigate using quite different information, and then as long as you have good communication and can integrate that together, you develop redundancy in your navigating. Places where my navigation technique doesn't work very well, Sean's generally does, and vice versa. So yeah,
that's interesting. I haven't quite heard that before. I've heard of many teams having a lead navigator who is very skilled and they put all their trust in that person, but this kind of 2-pronged approach is something I haven't heard before, so that's interesting.
It's partly because, I mean, to be completely honest, it's probably because Sean's a better navigator than me, but I refuse to let go of the maps, if I was to be completely honest about it. No, we've each got our strengths and weaknesses, and we're both quite happy to navigate for the race, and we've got a pretty good environment in our team where 2 of us navigate, and then we've got Jeansy in the background who is able to navigate himself as well, but can act as like the kind of kind of brains of the operation, I guess, kind of behind it, who is very good at having and very experienced now. He's done more races. This is his 9th race. So is very good at kind of helping to integrate that information as we go. It just means that we can carry more speed, and that's what redundancy is in navigation, right? If you can add redundancy while maintaining your speed, you're going to make fewer mistakes.
Yeah, well, that sounds really interesting, and good luck for the racing ahead.
Thanks, man.
We'll be watching with a lot of interest as you guys get closer to the top each year you're doing this. So that's really cool to see. So should we get into our feature guest for this month?
Yeah, this one. I mean, it's on a racing theme, not event racing, not orienteering, but it's about some of the Canterbury-based junior elites, juniors, elites who have took it upon themselves to organise some pretty exciting racing in the Canterbury Port Hills. Dougal Sheppard, who you caught up with. Shall we have a listen?
Yeah, let's have a listen to Dougal.
How's it going?
Hey, Dougal. Thanks for coming on Nav Chat.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so I saw you guys were organising some races, and I wanted you to tell us about what these races are, what it's like being like a young organising team, and yeah. So what's the initial idea? Who started this off?
So it kind of stemmed from the Wild Things running group. There's a Mount Vernon challenge and a few other kind of local, just like up and back sort of races. And
so for those that don't know, Mount Vernon is in the Port Hills, right?
In the Port Hills, yeah. And
pretty accessible. Is that straight up from town?
Yeah, from the Mount Vernon one's from Mount Vernon car park. Just goes up Mount Vernon and comes down the farm track, one of the other tracks. And there's been a couple of them, just sort of fun, free, like local races. And then, yeah, I was thinking, well, like surely there could like be a wee series for it. And so I had some chats with some guys about just like sort of a free series, just a fun thing. And then we're like, oh, well, I talked to Scott Smith, who has the Crazy Care events, and we were like, oh, surely make it a wee side hustle and make some money to go to Europe this year, hopefully. And yeah, so it came from that.
How many races are you planning to put on in the series?
3. So we just had our second one last night.
Cool.
Yeah.
And how long are these races? And yeah, what format are they? Are they a straight running race?
Yeah, so they're around about 8Ks. Each week they summit a different peak in the Port Hills. And we've found the winning times have been about 40 minutes for Joe. And yeah, we've had about 70 people signing up for each of them. So I've been pretty happy with that.
Cool. Yeah, that's really good for a first year. And yeah, maybe if the response continues to be good, is this something you'll consider doing in the future, or is this just a one-off for this year's Europe trip?
Yeah, I guess it will depend on where I end up for my job next year after finishing uni. But yeah, I was thinking like next summer it could be a good sort of take the summer off and do something, not get into a full-time job straight away and just organise some races or do something like that. Yeah.
Cool. So there's you and Scott Smith. Is there anyone else who's involved?
Yeah, so I've taken the lead on most of the admin sort of stuff, and Scott's taking care of the insurance and some of the stuff that I wasn't too sure about. And then we've got Brianna and Ollie and also Ayrton Shadbolt helping out on the day, being marshals and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, are there road crossings to navigate?
Yeah, normally there's 1 or 2 because you have to go across the summit road to get to the peaks. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Is there anything else that you've learned while trying to organize these races? I mean, yeah, maybe you've learned a bit about the health and safety side also.
Yeah, we've done a little bit of health and safety sort of stuff at uni. So using that in dealings with the council was definitely a key sort of learning. A couple of like back and forth things with the council, like that kind of seemed like not the obvious way of doing things. Like I put in the health and safety plan that would put out signs just to show, like, say, runners will be crossing. And they said, oh, well, if you're going to do that, you have to have a full traffic management plan. I was like, oh, I don't want to get involved with that. So they just said, oh, just take away the signs and then you won't have that issue. And I was like, what? Like, surely, like, yeah. And that's kind of transferred to my work, my actual summer work in forestry as well, because they have that same problem with putting out like trucks crossing signs. And the boss said he just puts them out anyway because like he thinks it's beneficial for the community, like to actually have them there. So yeah, health and safety and insurance and like public liability sort of stuff was definitely new stuff. But yeah, a lot of the like people, organisation stuff we'd already done with orienteering sort of event stuff. Yeah,
that's really cool that there are some people who are getting familiar with these skills, because I often feel like it's something that many of the people involved in organising orienteering don't want to deal with. And so having those skills makes you a huge asset to organising orienteering events in the future. So yeah, that's really cool to see younger people getting those kinds of experiences.
Yeah,
Cool.
For sure.
So good luck with the third and final one of the series. And I'll keep a lookout for your events in the future.
Awesome. Cheers, Jane.
Did that remind you, listening to Dougal, of that race that we organised many years ago in Auckland, fundraising trail running race that we did?
Oh, yeah, it did actually. Enduro trail run.
Yeah. That was a different one. We tried
time.
Yeah, we tried to bring it was mainly, I think, your brainchild, I think, bringing the subordinate timing into trail running with some intermediate time sections that were worth extra points. Yeah, maybe before its time, yet to be.
I still think it's got its merits. I still think it's got its merits. One day, enduro trail. If anyone's got an idea, the loose end wants to organise an event, enduro trail run.
Yeah. So enduro, as in copying off the mountain bike enduro style.
Yeah. Hey, for these guys, they could do it. They could use sport ident timing. You have a king of the mountain and a descent leader. Great. But no, I think what they're doing is awesome. I think it's a cool way to develop some transferable skills that are good for orienteering. And it's a great way to pay the bills when you've got to get across to Europe for some orienteering too.
Yeah, it really does solve both those problems. And I was really encouraged, and I'd only heard about that very last minute when NE was heading down to Christchurch just a few days before that. And someone said, oh, hey, check out these Dougal's organising a running race, go join. And I was like, what? Dougal's organising running races? So I mean, that's one of the most pleasant surprises you can see as someone who's invested in the success of the orienteering community, to see people take interest in developing skills that you don't have. And without these skills, we couldn't run the sport. So it's so essential that everyone can do one thing, just one job, and help out the collective a bit more. So I was really, really thrilled to see them organize those races, even if they're not orienteering directly. It's really those skills that matter.
I think looking ahead to this year, we've got the National Orienteering League and National Sprint League happening. I think that the environment that's present at the moment in Christchurch with training, organising races, the orienteering that's going on as well, I think that it's building Southerly Storm into a pretty formidable group of runners, especially when we're thinking of the teams competition as well. Lots of depth, lots of focus on physical preparation, lots of navigation. It's going to be a hard ask for Central Scorchers and Northern Knights to take that team on, I think.
Yeah, especially if the fifth round was to organise a race yourself. I think Storm would win.
Maybe that's how do you integrate that into the points? I'm not quite sure. We're going to build from that. We're thinking about National Orienteering League, and one of the upcoming rounds is going to be the JWOC trials, COVID asterisk, but I would think it will probably go ahead. Don't know, we'll see. But anyway, the JWOC trials are due to be in the end of March down in the Manawatu or Wairarapa. I get them mixed up. Anyway, they're lower half of the North Island, gully spur terrain, and we thought it was a good opportunity to revisit what are foundation techniques in handrails and stepping stones, but how you might apply those in gully spur terrain. Do you have the maps, Gene?
Yeah, let's take a look. So we'll first just jump to that news item, and then we'll flip back to the coaching just to give it some context. So the map, Glen Lean is one name. You also might hear Mingi Mingi as another name. This is the last time I was on this map. It was on a training camp, and we did some route choice exercise. It's a very appropriate map for route choice. And so there's an article here on the ONZ website that you can easily search to see the comments there from Malcolm. This is part of the map. The map is fairly varied and continues further south with some different style terrain. But this section here is like very typical spur-gully, and the valleys are green, which makes the route choice, pushes the route choice dynamics in a certain direction. And there's a lot of similar features, a lot of spurs that are all about the same size, all kind of smooth, a lot of saddles and like false peaks as you go up these spurs. So yeah, a lot of repetition, small streams. So
the key with this, I guess, is how do you A, identify handrails, and B, in terrain that's very repetitive, how do you choose stepping stones? How do you choose things that are distinctive enough? Should we tackle the handrails first, Jen?
Yeah, I did want to tackle handrails, and I wanted to flick back to the coaching framework. This is in the red section, advanced handrails and stepping stones. I've got some good ideas here for some coaching exercises that I think are really useful to further develop this very core skill at red level orienteering. And stepping stones and handrails is about finding a very reliable way to the control, but also about avoiding finding yourself on a parallel feature. And I think that's going to be a really important part of those races going forward. And so one exercise to help develop this technique that I really like is this instructional exercise. I've got a little guide here on the coaching framework that people should check out to explain the exercise more fully, but I'll go just the 10-second version is you're running with a partner and you're telling them what to look for. So you've got the map and they are just following your instructions, but you're not saying go left, go right. You're saying look for the such and such. And that's so key when you're in terrain with multiple spurs and multiple valleys, because you can't just say, oh, look for the spur. You've got to point out something unique about the correct spur and something incorrect about the incorrect spur so that they get on the right line. And I think those that are doing those races should really take heed of that concept, that it's not just about what is a good set of instructions, like a plausible set of instructions, what is a foolproof set of instructions. So down the hill and then up the spur is not foolproof when you jump to a map like this, because you could be going up multiple spurs. You could even be going down multiple slopes if you don't have your compass sorted. So,
okay. So you talked about how you can make sure, you talked about the importance of identifying handrails distinctively. Sometimes that's not entirely, sometimes you need to rewind a step further to what you can use as handrails in this terrain. And that advanced handrail selection here, there's a lot more features on this map than some other gully spur maps, which allows you to use other things. So obviously beginner level handrails, tracks, rivers, fences, kind of intermediate, you're getting into your distinct spurs. But the other thing you can start to incorporate here is changes in slope as an advanced level handrail, where you've got a bit of terrain that's going from flat to steep, or the slope levels out a bit and you're going to stay at the change in slope. I'm thinking that start triangle there. You've got this edge around the I get the control, right there, just in the upper half of the screen. You've got this edge around the top of the steep terrain. You've actually got quite a good handrail there where you can stay in the white running forest. So that advanced handrail selection is the first step, thinking in advance of what you can use. Then the secondary part you've got is how do you make sure that you've identified that handrail accurately and you're not making a parallel error.
There's another good example of that just here, when there's definitely scope to make a mistake on these 3 spurs if you're really sloppy coming off the hilltop here. But as you come down them, this one has little hills, this has a broad flat area, and this has neither. So there's an example of making the plan foolproof. So there's a way to distinguish what is the wrong spur, not just am I on a spur.
Now, you mentioned stepping stones as well, where you've got a handrails where you have a linear feature that you can follow, can guide you along part of your leg. Stepping stones are more point features or points on lines which you can jump between to get between 2 controls. Now, there are some really typical stepping stones that gully spur terrain gives us, which I think are probably one of my favorite stepping stones around, which is a really distinct saddle. Trying to link up saddles is a great way to make sure that you're in just the right spot. What are some of the other stepping stones that you look for on terrain like this?
Yeah, well, firstly, I just show that the saddles are really useful, because not only does it tell you you're on the right line, it also tells you exactly where your height is. So they're really good. On this map here, you've got some of these small hills that are stony as well, these little rocky outcrops. So if you're even near some of these little guys, that's going to stand out quite a lot. So that's the next best one, and it just gets trickier from then on. I also like these trees, these distinctive trees. There's a lot of them over here by this number 8 and number 9. They will stand out when you've got a pine forest that's very every tree is the same age and planted at the same time, and then you have some totally different tree species planted under the canopy, just growing under the canopy. Then it stands out. You know, someone telling you to look for a tree in a forest sounds ridiculous until you realize that it's a different kind of tree. And
so that's good, all examples of point features. The other thing you can use as a stepping stone is you can use an intersection with a handrail, so like crossing a handrail perpendicular. The kind of typical teaching on that is when you cross a linear feature, you should identify where you've crossed it. Often you can use that by looking at other things, but I think that in gully spur terrain, one of the really useful applications of that is checking your direction when you cross creeks and roads. You can see here this map's basically intersected in multiple ways by this track network as well as this large creek network. You can say, oh, I'm going to cross the creek and then climb the spur. That's, like you said before, asking for trouble. Better to make the creek into a stepping stone and say, I'm going to cross the creek at this point. I'm going to know I'm at that point because I'm going to check my direction, and then I'm going to climb the correct spur, which has this characteristic about it. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And the intersection of interest in a lot of these, a lot of kind of legs like you've described could be a stream junction or a stream branching. And instead of just leaving the stream where you feel like leaving the stream, maybe stay in the stream a bit longer so that you get to the junction, and then when you leave the stream, you know precisely where you've left the stream. No ambiguity. Or maybe there's something that crosses the stream, like a fence or a track. Continue on just until you get a 100% confidence in where you are.
Cool. All right. So let's wind this back to a little summary. So we're going to say, first of all, handrails and stepping stones have some important considerations in gully spur terrain. The first point we want to make is around handrails. You want to make sure that you're choosing something distinctive you can identify and avoiding parallel error. You're wanting to consider things like saddles and other point features that are distinctive when you're thinking of stepping stones. And then lastly, don't forget that a handrail, if you cross it at an early point, can also become a really useful stepping stone for moving through this terrain. Lastly, have a check of the coaching framework in advanced or in the red section, and it kind of runs this down again.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
including some training exercises. Great.
Yeah, some good training exercises there to really help develop the skills that you went through. So check them out.
Cool. What have we got in the news this week?
Yeah, so we do have some racing coming up, like you said. This is my first time I'm entered. This will be my first time doing a knockout sprint. So I'm looking forward to this. I've done a knockout sprint training and thought it was quite interesting, actually. I didn't think it would be my thing, but yeah, it seems cool. So I'm looking forward to racing this, and a bit nervous already. It's so head to head, and it's so decisive and cutthroat who the winners and losers are. So yeah, I'm definitely a little bit nervous about going head to head with people. So yeah, let's see what this is like. So we've got a whole bunch of sprint racing in Palmerston North over next weekend, and yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah. Oh, this Palmerston North is made for sprint orienteering. It's got, these maps are all excellent. I think Massey University is probably one of my favourite sprint maps in the country. So this will be cool. I'm going to be in the hills for Godzone, so I won't be there. But hopefully, COVID pending, you can all go ahead.
Yeah.
Now we've got not just the National Sprint League, but National Orienteering League. We've already mentioned this.
Yeah, so we have some more races, some more points up for grab in the National O League. So I'm not going to be racing this because I'm actually involved in planning some of the courses. So I'm on the sidelines for at least the long distance. But it looks good. The Glenley map is good quality, and I think the courses are going to be good too.
Sweet. I won't ask you to tell us too much about it, but keep it a little bit secret.
So yeah, it says as secret as this webpage on the ONZ website. This is probably your best source of tips, and this is all open for people to have a look at. Likewise, this map. Cool. On to something more international. This was email in my inbox last night on IOF asking me to fill out a survey. If you did get that email, then the link to the survey is here on the IOF website, and you can find this article pretty clearly on the front page of their website. And I thought this was interesting. This issue first cropped up at World Orienteering Champs a number of years ago. Is this a topic of discussion that has that you've stumbled across before, Tom?
Yeah, this has been an issue for a while, hasn't it? It's long. This has been discussed, I'd say probably for close to 10 years, at least, probably longer. Okay. It's been a discussion point ever since I've been when I was an elite. Yep. Should men and women have the same length long distance? Probably, I'd say. I mean, that's what I'd say, but yeah. It doesn't mean the same course. It just means the same winning time. I think that makes complete sense.
Yeah. So
a lot of sports are pretty backwards when it comes to this. Cycling is also the same, pretty backwards.
Yeah. Well, I think my take is a bit different to this, and I was kind of I shared your point of view before I saw this issue get raised at World Champs those years ago, and my thinking was totally changed by the outcome of that. And
why was that?
My thinking was that I now realize I take issue with the question, or at least the presentation of the question, and that's we're assuming that IOF is the right person or the right group to be deciding what the course lengths should be, and obviously they're the only people who can sign off on what the winning times should be. But what they did at World Champs is they asked all the women in the field to vote, right? And whatever their outcome is, I'm indifferent to. I mean, it affects them and really them alone. So the idea that people who were not actually in the competition are deciding on what the people in the competition or ought to be doing, or at least, deciding for them, just actually struck me as the mistake that's been made, and maybe making the whole discussion kind of obsolete. Did that kind of make sense to you, the way I described it?
Sort of. You're saying that you think that you're saying that the people who it affects should decide.
Yeah.
That people that are affected by this decision should decide.
Yeah, just put it out to vote to the women's athletes, and kind of in this debate of people who have like arguments on either side about whether this is, just some legacy.
What about if you're winning now and you're winning with short winning times, and you suck when the distances get longer? You're going to vote to keep it the same, aren't you?
You are right. So that would be.
Why is it different? Why were they ever different?
I don't know, but what's the future going to be?
Yeah.
So what's the future going to be? Let's see. Maybe there is a reason that people like it the current way it was, which was the outcome of the vote those years ago at JWOC, is the consensus was, at least the majority.
I don't think it was a consensus.
Okay, well, it depends what you mean by consensus. It wasn't like an overpowering majority, but there was a majority that voted to keep them the same. And that included a mix of countries, some of the top countries, some of the smaller countries. And people said, no, this suits.
You can say that if you change it from one year to the next, there would potentially be a year where it would like undermine competition a little bit, maybe, if you had like a sudden change just in terms of people's preparations. But yeah, who decides? Yeah, I mean, yeah, fair.
Okay.
Yeah, I can see that point of view. I also think that that's like all decisions in sport are somewhat arbitrary.
Yeah, I agree. I think the decision ultimately is arbitrary, and so it's more about
no
the
right
process
and wrong
and
answer.
the pitching. Yeah, that's right. But a wrong answer is changing something that wasn't done with due consultation, and the people who it affects were not put first and foremost in the decision-making process. So it's more about like a process outcome than a outcome, because it's ultimately arbitrary. I think that's.
Why did you vote then? Why did you vote? Why did you put your vote in then?
Oh, my vote was that. I take issue with the question. How about other women, not me?
Fair enough. Because I used to think that's a bit like, yeah. Interesting. Neither you nor I are an elite woman, so
yeah,
we will see.
That's right. Whereas if they're asking me about what the distance of the men's winning time should be, yeah, I actually quite like where it is. But
I just look at. I mean,
my vote, yeah.
I guess at least I was trying to do something about it. I just look at cycling, and cycling's like paralyzed by like anything. They can't make any decisions about anything really. But we will see what IOF do with this. Speaking of IOF, they were some World Championships events which New Zealand did not have any competitors at. Somewhat niche. Yeah. This is like the niche of the niche, I think.
Yeah, this seems to be the only thing going on at the moment. Still winter in Europe, so there's not much forest orienteering going on, but there is some ski orienteering, which is kind of cool. And yeah, I thought we should check it out. Did you watch much of the Winter Olympics?
I don't have a TV, so not a lot.
Yeah, so I don't either. But I was at a friend's house once, and we had the biathlon on and watched the pursuit with the biathlon, which is basically like chasing start for orienteering. And you can see the crossover between cross-country skiing and orienteering. Like, there's such a heavy influence in the way the courses are started, and the way a lot of the athletes like hold themselves, I think.
Very Nordic and sport,
race.
both
yeah,
Nordic sports.
Yeah, very. You can see the cultural crossovers. And the thing with the pursuit is, at least at the biathlon at the Olympics, is there was a gold medal for like essentially the prologue as well, which is the sprint. And then they start with those start intervals into like a medal race. So if there was like two medals up for grabs in the chasing start, essentially, which I thought was a bit strange. But it's the same here in the skiing. You can see that same kind of thing going on, which is a bit different. So let's have a look at the sprint course here, very similar to mountain bike orienteering. It's fast tracks, slow tracks, and some pretty big calls as well. You'd have to have scope with terrain and know the conditions quite well.
What's the trident?
Don't know. Good question.
Not allowed to go there.
So yeah, this is ski orienteering. People taking the it starts over there. So see some pretty pretty fast decision making, very similar to mountain bike orienteering. You really have to get the exit direction sorted. You can't just compass out of the control.
You need to stay on the groomed trails, I guess, as well. You can't be bringing your alpine ski touring setup and just smashing straight between all the controls.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know enough about ski. I don't know enough about cross-country skiing. It does look quite technical, though. I think you were right. Exit direction is pretty key. Wow, that's massive.
Yeah, like there's just a lot of options on some of these trails, and having a good framework to simplify the navigational challenge, I think, is important. I also don't have any experience with this, so I'm not really sure how easy it is to read the map while skiing. I know mountain bike orienteering is actually the task of reading the map is half the challenge. Is like, when is it actually safe to read the map? Yeah. So, and here's a couple of pictures in the terrain. So this is a groomed trail, one of the bold thick green ones. So that's fairly fast travel compared to some of these smaller ones, just between the trees. Powder looking pretty thick there, so you can see why it's definitely slower going on these groomed ones.
Snow Farm, isn't that the Snow Farm off on the Pisa Range is where they have the New Zealand's annual ski orienteering event?
Yes. Did you know that New Zealand has a ski orienteering map and a ski orienteering race often? So it's been done.
Chris Vaughan special.
Yeah.
I think, wouldn't Chris be one of the best? I mean,
I'd say he's defending champion. I would assume.
There's someone who could hold mountain bike orienteering, foot orienteering, and ski orienteering national titles. I think Chris would probably be about the only contender.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Interesting. So we've got a big month coming up for some domestic sprint and National Orienteering League competition. Parting thought, I was going to say, we've heard from the Christchurch crew about how they're running a kind of quick and dirty, I guess you could say, but an event, they're just making it happen. What would you do, Jean, if you had all the time in the world and you wanted to try and put on like a midweek event? What would you do?
So I just assumed that I'm here in Wellington.
Yeah, so, Wellington. Yeah.
Yeah. So the midweek events here are really only going to be row games or sprint orienteering or some kind of trail run like that. There's certainly no quality classic orienteering.
I'm not going to hold. You don't have to be held to this, but what would you do? Where would you put it?
Yeah. So it's an interesting one midweek because you're trying to avoid the traffic, or you're trying to get like close to where people work. So
Mount Vic.
Yeah, that's right. Like if you can get it organized early enough, then people can do the event close to where they work and then commute later when rush hour's over. So that seems pretty smart, and I'd definitely be in favor of easy access urban style orienteering, and I think that's why Summer Series in Auckland has been so successful. If you're close enough, I guess it's very accessible. There's always enough people who are like close enough to the event that there's always a big turnout. And it's also accessible in the sense that anyone with just a smidgen of navigation know-how can have a good time. It's not intimidating. It's not elitist in any way. So I kind of like I'd like more the sprint stuff where the mapping is actually like decently reliable, not like these kind of old school urban maps that.
So you do a Wellington, somewhere urban, up-to-date sprint map, single sprint course.
Yeah, probably single sprint course or row gang. Either way, I think it's as long as the map's good and as long as the control placements are interesting. That's all good. There we go. we got there.
Fair enough.
Came to a resolution, but yeah, you had me on the spot. I hadn't really thought about how to do that, but it's a good question to answer.
How about this? What about if you have like Hamilton, limited places to run? You have your set terrain. So for instance, we've got this like Hillary Hope Reserve, which is on the way out to Raglan. It's got maybe like 5 tracks that you can kind of link up. And I reckon you just have like a 3 or 4 control row gain, and you just move them slightly each week. So it's more of a pack run. If you do that, you either do the 4 course, the 3 course, the 2 course, or the 1 course. You choose whichever way to go. So there's an element of choose your route, but it makes use of this like relatively restricted area to get between them. So it's a mixture of a pack run with some very basic navigation. That's mine. That would be mine.
Yeah, good use, and certainly applicable to all the people out there who are just getting into.
It's a gateway drug. That'll be your gateway drug.
And yeah, a lot of the road gainers and the adventure racers would find that really suitable. So that makes sense.
You should have talked to Dougal about the enduro trail run.
Trying to sell on for the next season.
Yeah,
just
royalties, please. No, they can keep them. Anyway, good to chat, man.
We'll see you next month, Tom.
Yep. See ya.
If you liked the show, please support it by sharing this podcast with one person who would benefit from it. The best place to find more content like this is at genebeverage.nz, where you can find years of training blogs, race reports, podcasts, and coaching videos. If you don't want to miss future episodes, I recommend subscribing to my newsletter by visiting genebeverage.nz or by following on social media, Perfect Flow on Facebook and Gene Beverage on Instagram. For Q&A, send messages to nav@perfectflow.nz.